Noah Shelby is coming back for another year at Kansas. We break down the current outlook of the roster for Bill Self and KU, and one of our top 10 portal targets already picked a different school.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks, a little bonus episode because we wanted to send out a quick update. I literally was finished recording, and then looked down at the phone, and Kyan Evans picked a new school, and he was on our top 10 list. So quick update there. Also, Noah Shelby announced he is coming back for KU. Could he be the answer for the Jalen Coleman-Lands role for Kansas? And we get to the current roster outlook at this point for KU basketball on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for joining us anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. All right, let's start right there with a quick update. We had Kyan Evans, I think number 9 in our top 10 list of available transfer targets for KU basketball, and he has picked North Carolina. Seems like one where KU has been prioritizing maybe some other names a little bit more over Evans, that there was some interest there, and obviously he would have been a good fit for KU in terms of bringing some shooting on board and into the backcourt for Kansas, but probably gets a better opportunity at North Carolina than maybe the one Kansas was providing him, whether it's monetarily, whether it's playing time, whether it's a mix of both, who knows. But again, if Kansas is prioritizing another guard, maybe it's Melvin Council Jr. or something, then it kind of makes sense that you would see that happen. So just wanted to make it a quick update there. If we were taking him off that list and putting on a different player into the top 10, I mentioned in that episode the kid from San Francisco, Malik Thomas, who about 20 points per game, he would kind of fill that role of being like a really good shooter and scorer that you could have the opportunity to bring to the table. Now, one guy who's a really good shooter is going to be coming back for Kansas this upcoming season, and that is one Noah Shelby. So let's discuss that in just a moment here on Locked On Jayhawks. This bonus episode of the show today is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel's giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $200, $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team, diving into player props from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into the same game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you, everydayers, catching each and every show and working overtime and working with our extra show here. Okay, so Noah Shelby, this is his dad, I believe. Derek Shelby posted this on social media, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. He said, Noah Shelby took this past year to redshirt at Kansas. This year was used to further develop under Coach Self and the entire Kansas coaching staff. He's improved a lot, and we look forward to an opportunity for him to compete this upcoming season. Hashtag Rock Chalk. Also had some highlights on there of him, in practice games, shooting some threes and some impressive stuff and what he's able to get off. And that was kind of the scouting report on him coming in. He was somebody who could, really stroke it from the outside and shoot the three ball well. I think the bottom part of that quote kind of tells you what you need to know to compete this upcoming season, that Bill Self has probably told him, you don't have a guaranteed role on this team, but I'm going to be open to it, right? If you come out and you look really improved and you do all these things and you're this good three-point shooter, you end up working your way into the 8th or 9th man in this rotation, then great, right? Like prove it, show me what you can do, right? And so I found that interesting that was kind of part of it at the very end there. And I do think it's interesting because as much as we talk about can they find somebody in the transfer portal for the Jalen Coleman-Lands role this past season, the Diggy Coit role, basically a guy who is your 8th or 9th man, right? That fringe, is he part of the rotation player where some games he might play 5 minutes, right? You come out, you start 0 for 2 from 3. Okay, it's not your night. Other nights, you start 3 for 3 from 3, and all of a sudden you're playing 20, 25 minutes in that specific game, or you're in the closing lineup because Kansas needs a 3 and you're playing well, like Diggy Coit did in that Houston game down at the Fertitta Center. That's kind of the Jalen Coleman-Lands Diggy Coit role that yeah, okay, it's a 7-man rotation. You're the 8th man. Some games you're part of it. Some games you're not. It just kind of depends how you're shooting, right? Or it's an 8-man rotation and you're the 9th guy. And there is a chance that that guy is already on the roster in the form of Noah Shelby. Now, maybe it even is a guy like Jamari McDowell, right? But I do think that Shelby, I think McDowell profiles to being maybe more of a two-way type of player, whereas Shelby more of like 3-point shooter, and he'll be a redshirt junior. And the thing about Noah Shelby, so he was a walk-on this past year's team, but it was one of those like technical walk-ons where this kid was a Division I basketball player on scholarship at previous schools. He was a former, 3-star recruit. So, it's not like this kid was on the JV team and never made it to varsity team of high school. He went to Vanderbilt out of high school, right? So it's a power university. Played 14 games as a freshman, 31% from three. Then he went to Rice in year 2, played 30 games for Rice, only 12 minutes per game at a lower level, but 33% from three. So again, this is not just like, random walk-on coming on. And so now that they're basically getting rid of walk-ons, he earns a scholarship to come back. And especially for Kansas, you have 14 scholarships to fill. You still have 5 available at this point. Like it's good you have Noah Shelby. So you look at the opportunity for Shelby, and I think that's what it is. I think it's that opportunity to compete for that kind of 3-point shooting, Jalen Coleman-Lands, Diggy Coit role. And you look at the other guards, it would be like with Elmarko Jackson, he'll be part of the rotation. Darryn Peterson going to be a starter, right? With Jaden Dawson, feel good, he'll be part of the rotation. Then it's a competition, I think, between, at this point, Jamari McDowell and Noah Shelby for which guy could that be. And maybe it ends up being somebody they bring in, obviously still via the transfer portal. But with Shelby, if you were known as a 3-point shooter at high school and you went from 31 to 33, freshman, sophomore, now you had a redshirt year. Let's say you got a little bit better. Now you have another year under your belt. What happens if he is like a 37% 3-point shooter, right? Is that enough to play that specific role for Kansas? I think that would be very interesting if he could develop into that. He's still redshirt junior, so he would still have this year and possibly one more year. Obviously, from his perspective, if he doesn't get run this year, I'd imagine he's going to be like, okay, I'll probably transfer for my last year to get playing time, although you never know because guys can obviously be in good situations, even if you're on the lower end of the totem pole at Kansas in terms of how you're taken care of. But it's a good thing to have these players back because, again, you have 14 scholarships to fill. You need guys that are content competing and they're not going to cause a ruckus if they end up being the 12th man on the roster. Or like maybe deep down they're like, oh, I wish I was playing more. Sure. But there's a difference between that, being a competitor and being like, I want to play more, and going to cause problems for the team. And I don't think that would be the case for Noah Shelby. So you have to have guys like this and guys that are going to put the work in, like I think he is, if all goes well and he is, the best 3-point shooting guard off the bench for you, maybe he can fill that specific role. And if not, and he ends up being the 12th or 13th man on a 14 scholarship roster, like that's totally cool too, right? Because you got to fill out some way and you got to have players in practice to be able to, make shots and make plays now that there are no other walk-ons. All right, what does the rest of the roster look like at this point in time for KU? Thanks for joining us again on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks, and thanks for tuning in anywhere you get podcasts, including on our YouTube page. So again, this is kind of a quick follow-up to our episode that we posted earlier today, so make sure to check that out with the top 10 available portal targets, but again, no Kyan Evans as part of that. So what does the current roster look like for Kansas? So I think right now, the starting 5 would be Darryn Peterson, Elmarko Jackson, Jaden Dawson, Trey White, Flory Badunga. Off the bench, your first bench big would be Bryson Tiller. And then your first bench guard would be, I guess, Jamari McDowell or Noah Shelby. You'd have Smeeze Calderon there too. Obviously, Kansas is looking for more, players via the transfer portal. They have 5 scholarships open at this point in time. Let's just say they added a starting level guard, right? And then the starting lineup at that point maybe becomes that guard, Darryn Peterson, Jaden Dawson, Trey White, Flory. Elmarko becomes your 6th man. And then you have Bryson Tiller as your first bench big or transfer addition to be your backup center, right? And there's your 6th and 7th man. And then it's like, okay, who's the 8th man? Is it Jamari McDowell? Is it Smeeze Calderon? Is it another transfer addition? Or is it Noah Shelby? And you do start to look through those. And if we're specifically talking, as I've mentioned, if you're playing a drinking game with me saying JCL or Diggy Coit role, good luck to you. And if we're talking about that specific role and we're talking about hypothetically, if those were the players on the bench, Noah Shelby is kind of the one who is the best 3-point shooter. Now, again, maybe Jamari McDowell ends up being a lot better 3-point shooter than when we last saw him. And he was in the, high 20% from 3. But I do find that kind of interesting that I guess I wouldn't rule it out, especially if you're Kansas. Like, view it this way. If you're Kansas And do you even consider not even filling the full 14? Honestly, like, do you consider just using 12 or 13 scholarships from a standpoint of, if you don't use your 14th scholarship, even if you figure the 14th guy, what if the NIL on the 14th guy you were going to add is 100,000, but you can use that 100,000 to bring in a little bit better player at another position? Are you better just using 13 scholarships? I think that's going to be an interesting question for how Bill Self and college basketball coaches and teams in general kind of operate with this. Like, are there going to be some teams that just use 11 scholarships and they're like, no, we're just going to hope we don't get injured, and we're just going to make sure we have more money to pay the guys we really want, as opposed to working too much depth of guys that are going to be more practice bodies. But then, how does that work in practice and stuff, since there aren't walk-ons around anymore to kind of fill those specific roles for what you want to do? But with Shelby, again, like, does it end up being like Shelby ends up being a cheaper option to be a possible 9th or 10th man than, bringing somebody in via the portal, and that allows you to get a better 5th starter, that allows you to get a better 7th man, or whatever it ends up being? I'm not saying I'm expecting those things to happen, or that those things are going to happen, because again, there's also a very real chance Shelby is the 12th or 13th man, but that would be an interesting strategy at the very least to deploy for Bill Self and company. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page. Check out the top 10 available targets again, minus Kyan Evans, as a quick bonus episode here. See you next time with Locked On Jayhawks.